First time in primetime Bud shootout, Dale Earnhardt Jr. earns his first Daytona victory. Rain washes out qualifying and the ARCA race on Sunday. When they finally got to run for the pole, Dale Jr. took it away from Michael Waltrip, but his elation lasted about 50 seconds. It's about how long it took Jeff Green to get his Chevrolet around the speedway and win the pole for the 500. In practice Tuesday, Jack Sprague turns Mike Skinner sideways against the field. And on Wednesday, Joe Nemechek wins the pole for today's Coolers 300 Busch race. Thursday, the Gatorade 125s. Robbie Gordon takes the win. Kurt Busch, an ill-advised entry onto pit road. Everybody's okay. And Dale Jr. has the only on-track pass of the day to go to victory lane. Friday, practice. Johnny Benson uses up the right side of his Pontiac. And look at this finish in the truck race. Rick Crawford in a Ford comes from turn 4 behind the car that stole the lead from him and won it. And Kerry Earnhardt super crashed his Busch car in final practice.
He'll have to go to a backup car and start his rear of the field today.
You know, one thing that we all have in common from 1959 to right now is that we all came through that opening right there, that tunnel, to get into this joint. And I know the first time I came through there, I was in awe. And I think that every young driver that comes through there the first time, we all have that same feeling. What in the world have I gotten myself into? Here you go. Look at those eyes. I love that. Right in there. Though I tell people all the time, I say, why do you talk about hands and eyes? I said, because it's like any other sport. That's what it is. It's your hands and your eyes. It's that hand-eye coordination, making those quick moves. You don't think about them. It's instincts. And your eyes tell you and your hands react. And, of course, if you had the foot down there, you'd see that it's pretty much matted. But that's the whole key to being a great race car driver is what you do with your hands and your eyes.
Well, he really checks that mirror out. Remember, the whole time this is going on, he has a spotter on top of the roof telling him a lot of information about things around him.
And I think that was one of the things that he was trying to tell Jimmy Johnson in practice the other day is, look, you got to know where everybody is all the time. Jimmy was uncomfortable. Jimmy said, I can't figure out how to keep them behind me. I can't figure out what line to get in. But Jeff does it by looking behind him, and he kind of moves around and picks the right place to be. And there's Jimmy right behind him again. Look, follow me. I'm going to show you how to do this.
But Chad Canals, Jimmy Johnson's crew chief, I think he pretty much put it in perspective. You know what's missing? 10 years of Winston Cup experience.
Right. And let's try to give his driver confidence. I think listening to Jimmy Johnson's comments, and they're going to pit this time, it sounded like he was having trouble getting somebody lined up behind him to give him a push, to give him help. He was okay maneuvering his car, but he was having trouble getting other people lined up with him so it would help his car.
Yeah, and there's just some drivers, certainly Dale Earnhardt was one of them, that you wanted to follow and wanted to be behind, and you'd go wherever he went. And that's Jeff Gordon's very similar. But I don't think I've seen anybody look in their mirrors, check their mirrors as much as Jeff does. He is constantly in that mirror, and that's because you drive defensively here. It's not about going fast and outrunning everybody. It's about keeping everybody behind you. See how he's kind of working the middle, what I call the middle of the street? He got those cars 2 by 2 behind him. He'll move down a little bit, pull Jimmy up, then he'll move up a little bit and pull Johnny up, and that's how you work it. You get out front and you just kind of tease them along. Hey, come on up. No, I'm going to move over. Now you come on up. And you keep everybody at bay.
Final practice for the Daytona 500. As Jeff Gordon pulls a group of cars along, Sterling Marlin still has the fastest speed ahead of rookie Casey Mears.
I guess here you keep them at beach.
Not at bay.
Not at bay.
Right.
This guy tells his buddy there's nothing he'd like.
Session for Sunday's Daytona 500. Steve Park on the 1 car, DEI car, currently running 26th, and that's where he ran in the morning session. In the Twin 125, the first of the 2, he had some, heating problems, overheating here, wound up finishing last. And let's get an update on how he's doing on the eve of the 500 and join our Jeannie Zalasko. Jeannie?
Well, Chris, to quote the great Rosanna Dana, if it's not one thing, it's another. We saw the engine blown the other day. That was a radiator problem. Blew that engine. They brought in another one, and that one was still overheating. Finally, this morning in the morning session, Steve told me that, hey, the car has finally cooled down, but now we have some other issues. His bumpy ride continues, and now I'm talking literally. The handling is not where he wants it to be. So right now, I brought the car in, and they're going to work on the shock package. They plan on using every minute of this practice session they can, because this is one DEI team that is feeling a little behind the 8 ball out here.
And there's a little nudge and grudge going on out there. Look at the 97 Kurt Busch, and up high right alongside the 43 of John Andretti. They've been like that for the last 2 laps, and at one point coming through the trial, Darrell, I think they might have rubbed together.
They probably did, but I think there's a frustration factor here. There's the 48, the 24, and the 8 up there in front of them. They'd like to get up there to them, but they can't because those 3 cars are just kind of easing away from them. But I think you're looking at, with the 48, the 8, and the 24, you're looking at the contenders for the Daytona 500.
You know, listening to Jeannie talk about Steve Park's car, it's such a compromise here, especially when it comes to the front shock package, Darrell. I'm the crew chief. I want to put something on there that's very aggressive, that's going to pull that front end down. But the compromise, you can't get so aggressive that it's going to be hard on the tires and cause a bumpy ride for the driver.
Yeah, now look at Jimmy Johnson. You notice when we were in the car with Jeff Gordon, Jeff was constantly checking those mirrors, looking over to the right, looking to the right, looking to the right. Jimmy Johnson's not doing that. He's focusing solely on where he's going, what's straight ahead of him. Utilizing the spotter more than what Jeff Gordon does. Jeff is relying on himself to make the right moves. I think Jimmy's relying on his car to be fast, and he doesn't want to have to worry about what's behind him, but that's not going to win the race.
Of course, what the spotter's talking about inside was Rusty Wallace in the 2 car right there to the inside of him, to the left side.
More on Rusty's day. Here's Matt.
And Rusty is still tweaking on his race car. He says the front is just bouncing too much, not the comfort level that he would like. They're just trying to pin down that nose. On his previous run, they made a spring change in both the left front and right front corners. That didn't really help the race car as much as he had hoped, so they went down on bar on the last time in. They're going to see if maybe that'll help fix Rusty's blue deuce.
And Matt, of course, what he's talking about is the front sway bar, the front anti-roll bar. They went smaller in diameter.
See, Jimmy got his hand up. He's off the track. He actually got his hand up out the driver's side window there. Dale Jr.'s coasting in right behind him. And so that's enough of that stuff. And
you know, Darrell, hand signals are so important in practice, you know, and you need to get off that racetrack down to the apron on backstretch. But with the smaller fuel cells, with more green flag pit stops tomorrow, I feel like those hand signals are going to be really important, letting these guys know, hey, I'm coming to pit road, because we always see a problem. The distance from turn 4 to the entrance of pit road is so short, we always see people get in trouble coming on the pit road, as we saw Kurt Busch in the 125-mile qualifying race.
Yeah, and these guys now, I mean, these are the Daytona 500 race engines. You do not want to hurt it. You don't want to put a lot of miles on it. You want to run about 50 miles to be sure everything is good. Then you want to put it in the garage.
Dale Jr., watch that number 8 with Jimmy Johnson right in the middle of your screen in the middle row.
He's bumping him.
Oh, yeah.
He's trying to push him through there. Dale Jr. has really been practicing coming to the line. He's been racing people. He's been getting himself in a position to see what he has to do to beat them back to the line. So his car's so fast, his agenda is totally different than maybe Jeff Gordon's or Jimmy Johnson's.
He is clearly the favorite for the Daytona 500. Winner of the Bud Shootout, and with this car, winner is Gatorade 125. But Larry, let's talk a little about the unintended consequence of the small fuel cell. Is that under the green flag, when one driver pits, everybody wants to pit with him so they don't lose the draft and get left behind, and that leads to a real cluster coming down pit road.
Yeah, I mean, the intent of the small fuel cell was to break the field up some and to keep from having that big pack and maybe prevent from having, as we call it time and time again at Daytona and Talladega, the big one or the big wreck. But the downside is more green flag stops. The way the draft works here, that you need to be running with cars, just like this group right here. If you're running by yourself versus a group, you're going to be losing a second and a half a lap out there by yourself because you don't have a drafting partner. So even when you come to pit road, you need a partner to come with you, where when you leave pit road, you have that drafting partner. But I know all the years as a crew chief, Darrell, one thing I really focused on here in Talladega was try to make it and sink it that we didn't end up on pit road with 25 cars, a good 8 or 10 cars, and also not pitting when my neighbor pitted, where my driver had a good way to come into his pit box and a free way to leave without getting blocked in.
Yeah, last night I was talking to Rusty, and he says one of the things that's happening, though, is because, as you know, tires are a big issue at Daytona. Talladega, you can run the same set for 500 miles. They didn't wear out. But here, handling is such a premium, and because they're pitting so often and putting 2 tires on all day long, it's keeping the cars actually bunched up more because the handling is not as big a factor as it normally is.
Normally about lap 30 or so is when the handling goes away and you're within a few laps, so that's when you pit for fuel.
And as we've seen in every race here with Dale Jr. and even Michael, they were out first in the 125s, and they had a whole straightaway on the back straightaway on the rest of the crowd. But in about 10 laps or so, maybe less, they were able to, the pack of cars was able to chase them down. You're not going to get away. You might get out there and be comfortable for a few laps, but you're not going to get away.
And as anybody who's seen the replay of Thursday knows, if you're on the outside lane and the group comes to pit under green and your pit is up toward the turn 4 end of pit road, you better rethink that. It's going to be hard to get on pit road and then to get inside to your pit.
Well, you're suckered in by the guys that are down at the other end. See, they can come in a little hotter. They can get their car under control because they got the whole length of the pit road to get slowed up to his pit road speed or to get slowed down to get in their pit box. If you're back here at one of the earlier pits and you try to break with them and come in the way they do, you're going to be in trouble like Kurt Busch was.
So, Larry, this year, I think more than ever before, when I pick my pit stall, I want to be down toward turn 1.
Well,
I have more options.
And how they pick the pits is by how you qualified. Kurt Busch did not qualify that well the other day, so when it came time for him to pick his pit for the 125-mile qualifying races, I'm sure his crew chief, Jimmy Finney, didn't have a lot of selection left. What you're going to see mainly at this is the exit of pit road. This is where probably more of the faster qualifiers are going to pit, along with in the middle, but down in the entrance of pit road, that's probably all that's going to be left when it comes time for the guys using provisional spots to pick.
The best spots on pit road, right outside Victory Lane, either right here or perhaps right here. Maybe because they're closest to Victory Lane, Darrell. You don't have far to walk.
I love pit 17. That's the one I want from.
Another reason I like pitting right here is you see these lines, what these are the timing lines that NASCAR clocks your pit road speed. So if you pit right here, what that means is this and this is all what I call a free segment. And with a restrictor plate engine, if you're pitting like right here, you almost can't speed by the time you get to the end of pit road. So I always like pitting right in here at Daytona or Talladega because you're right there on a timing line.
And see, the folks, these are things, folks, that you really need to know because you look at all this that's going on out here and you say, why do they do this and why do they do that, and well, what does that really matter? Everything that goes on from the time they qualify these cars until they start to race, there's a strategy involved.
And you know, it don't happen that much here at Daytona because about the whole field stays on the lead lap, but at some racetracks, I always like to pick a pit by a guy that I think may go a lap down because that's going to give me an opening shortly into the race.
Terry Labonte has climbed to the top of the speed chart. His brother Bobby is second. Sterling Marlin now third. Casey Mears and Elliott Sadler are the top 5 in final practice for the Daytona 500.
NASCAR on FX. Next Saturday, Busch Series Racing tackles The Rock. The Rockingham 200, presented by John Deere. Live next Saturday at 12:30 Eastern, 9:30 Pacific. NASCAR is on FX.
There's a place that I travel when I want to
Practice for the Daytona 500. The Labonte brothers are doing quite well. Each has won a Winston Points championship during his time as they get ready for the 500. Moments ago, the guys in the booth, Larry, Mike, and Darrell, were talking about the things that can go wrong, the shock problems, tires, things you have to worry about. Before we check in with Jeff Hammond on this, Larry and Darrell, how do you prepare, like a good scout, how do you prepare for this type of thing?
Well, here's the thing, Chris, is you never go out on that racetrack that you don't go out there just to ride around. You're not out there on a Saturday morning just having a little, cruise. You're always trying something. It might be a different set of tires with a certain amount of laps on them, different air pressure, tape that we've talked about, jets in the carburetor, timing in the engine, gear, shocks, even something as simple as how long it takes you to get up to speed when you leave pit road. The crew chief and the spotter are always working, watching the car, trying to tell the driver, here's something we need to work on.
Watching from Dale Earnhardt Jr., who is currently 10th on the board. Now, in the morning session, Kevin Harvick was slower. He did turn a lap in this session that was 15th fastest. But, Jeannie, how much concern is there down there?
Oh, there is great concern right now, talking about things that can go wrong. I guess the biggest problem right now is when you don't really know what it is. All the water has blown out of the engine of Kevin Harvick's 29 car, and right now they're waiting for NASCAR to come over. The thought process here is that they have to change the engine, and looking for the positive in this thing, I guess they're pleased that if it's going to happen, it happened today and not tomorrow.
Okay, guys, I can relate to what's going on right there. In 1998, we won the Daytona 500 with this race team right here, the 3 team. In the final practice, we had an engine problem with a rocker arm. We fixed that rocker arm and completed the practice. Richard, Dale, myself, Richard Childress, we got together and he said, after practice, said, there's a reason that rocker arm broke. That's the reason we have backup motors. We're not going to take a chance, so we started the Daytona 500 with a backup motor. And I have to believe, even if they fix their problem, there's some concern what went on with this engine.
Yeah, I think one of the things that these Chevrolet teams are fighting, we've seen it in a couple of them, is the design of that front nose. It's totally different than what they've had in the past. And with that grill opening rolled back up on top of the nose the way it is, I don't think they're getting adequate air to these engines.
You know, I got an idea. Why don't we go down to Homer Simpson in the Hollywood Hotel parking lot? He's got some tricks down there.
Speaking of hot air.
Now, wait a minute, guys. This is not Homer. It might be a little bit of Bart, but not no Homer. Come on now. Look right here on our cutaway engine right now. This right here is your rocker arm, as they're talking about. This is what makes the valve go up and down as the air and fuel moves through the engine. This valve comes open, feeds the piston area. This is where the spark plug goes in. This is where the all ignition comes out. So if you break this rocker arm, you're going to lose a lot of horsepower. Plus, you run the risk of breaking a push rod, it going down inside the engine. All this could really be very detrimental as far as having your 500 hopes, really broke. So you got that kind of problem. It's better to get this engine out and get you another one in there so you can realize that. Now, earlier, Larry and Darrell and Mike have been talking about all the things that can go wrong, and a lot of guys have been working on different combinations to be able to get into pit road. I've never seen so many teams changing brakes and brake pads. We look right here. This is the size rotor a lot of the teams are going to. It's like an intermediate rotor. Normally they run a real thin rotor for the speedway, but this time they've gone bigger. They've gone to bigger calipers. They've also changed the brake pads, all in an effort to get their car woed up during these critical pit stops. The other day during the 125, several of these guys came in. This is what you call a flat spot. The driver has locked it up, got it up on the edge of the tire, and literally blown the tire out. This is what you can't have happen during a 500-mile race. You've got to be able to get into pit road, keep the car straight, not smoke the tires, and not jeopardize somebody on pit road. All these things are going to be so crucial when it comes to tomorrow's race. And before we leave, guys, I want to show you the rest of what we've got here to look at. This is our new Ford cutaway engine, and you got an opportunity here to be able to see a cutaway carburetor. This is the valve train, front part of the engine. I mean, we've got so many neat things here. Further back, we can go back in there. We can take a look at where the clutch package is right now. If we have a problem there, we can show you where that's all about. This is the transmission right here, all the different gear ratios. Some of the teams have been playing with transmission ratios to be able to get off of pit road also. Further back, this is what it looks like underneath the race car. This is the rear end housing. This is the pinion area here, ring gear. We've got a lot of neat things that we're going to be looking at during the course of the year. I keep using the term things, but these are very important components right now. If you want to win a Daytona 500, all these components have got to stay underneath this race car, and they've got to work properly. You got to take care of business, boys.
Thanks, Jeff. Richard Childress looking on as the bubbles rise as they refill that radiator and run that engine.
Yeah, what he's doing is he's watching the water in the radiator as the engine runs, and if that starts bubbling up out of there, he probably figures he's lifted a head gasket or got a crack in a cylinder head.
And the thing about it, he's not going to be giving up that great of a starting position if they change the engines. He's slated to start 31st right now, and he'd be back there with some good company. Mark Martin, who had to go with a backup car, and of course Rusty Wallace because of the carburetor problem.
Final practice rolls on. Some teams are pleased. Some teams have some hard work ahead of them.
Tuesday.
But Kevin Harvick slowest this morning and 15th. in this session, perhaps an engine problem.
That may be why he's slow.
His Childress Chevrolet. Now let's go across the garage to Hendrick Motorsports and Matt.
Mike, Jeff Gordon, Robbie Loomis, Randy Dorton, Brian Weitzel all debriefing about the 24 car here in the 48 side of the garage. Jimmy Johnson, you've already debriefed with your crew chief, Chad Knaus. Where do you stand?
I think our car's pretty good. Looks like the 8 car is kind of in his own league right now. When we have a 6-car draft going, he can come along the outside and still hang there with us, which shouldn't be able to happen. But, you know, our cars have been very strong, driving very good. We're getting good fuel mileage, so, you know, it's just a game of survival. I mean, weird things happen in this 500, and we're very happy. We're going to put a cover on it now and save it and make sure we don't tear it up and be ready for tomorrow.
Now, the 48 car just brushed the wall. You're going to, the 41 car, they're talking in my ear. The 41 car brushed the wall. You're going to cover up the 48 soon. But we've talked a lot about speed weeks, and you've been open about the fact you're still trying to learn all you can about drafting, but still you're a pretty stout little drafter.
I'm getting a lot better at it, and the way you learn is by making mistakes. And these guys have so many tricks up their sleeves, it's crazy. And I'm learning them more and more, and that list of don'ts are getting smaller for me. So I'm having a good time with it. And I've got a DW, come on, buddy. You got to work with me a little bit here. Beating up on me hard on TV, and then I make good passes while you're beating up on me. So cut me some slack. Be on my side. It'll be a lot better for you.
I'm glad to know he's watching.
Stop talking so much.
I'm glad. Hey, I'm glad to know he's watching.
We've been down here for 10 minutes waiting to do an interview, and you keep talking. I've been standing here waiting to go get a Gatorade, and now fortunately, I had someone bring one to me. So be quiet, would you?
Go watch yourself on TV.
He says to go watch yourself on TV.
Okay, you got it.
Tell him to hear me now, believe me later.
I'm going to tell you guys, this is a shame. I mean, this is a crew chief and a race team's nightmare. You have been here for a week and a half. You made the 500 by virtue of finishing 15th in the 125-miler. There's less than 10 minutes to go in the final practice, and your car looks like this.
You know, Larry, he did something that at first surprised me and then I thought was very smart. Instead of turning left into the garage when he came off turn number 4, he went most of the length of the pit road, turning the steering wheel very wide back and forth, trying to analyze how badly damaged the car is, because he's not going to be able to do that in the garage.
I don't think he's got any brakes.
Yeah, exactly.
That'd be another reason.
Yeah.
He's trying to scrub speed off, trying to get it stopped.
He's just trying to wobble it down there and get it woed up. Probably busted the right front rotor and stuff.
Of course, Casey Mears is scheduled to start 29th should they elect to repair this car, but they may decide to go to a backup car. That car, the thing about that, you know, you can fix the cosmetic, but there's always the question, what's bent that we can't find?
Yeah, that car hit the wall really hard. When you bow that right front in there like that, and like I say, I think he's busted the rotor and the brakes off of the thing. That thing's got some pretty serious damage.
Do these cars have dual channel brakes, or is it just a single master cylinder and a single set of lines?
Both. You know, some people run dual master cylinders, which means one controls the front wheels, one controls the rear. Some run the old Ford single master cylinder that controls all 4 wheels. So if you have a brake line problem, that's the downside of a single master cylinder. You have a problem, you have brakes on none of the 4 wheels.
And that could likely have been what happened to Mears, who was 4th fastest in this practice session.
And just to follow up a little bit with Jimmy, we're not picking on him. We're just observing what he's doing. And, you know, he's said Jeff and them have been trying to help him. He might ought to let us try to help him.
We're just giving him a chance to pick on us.
That's right.
That's all. Terry and Bobby Labonte, Sterling Marlin, Casey Mears, and Elliott Sadler. All those times, except Sadler and Bobby Labonte, set pretty early in this session. Ricky Craven, Mark Martin, Johnny Benson, Ricky Rudd, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. Benson and Martin in a backup car, interestingly, in the top 10.
Well, 5 cars elected to skip this final practice. They must have been pretty happy with their car in the morning practice, including pole sitter Jeff Green. Safest place for your race car? Casey Mears proves it again in the garage area.
Well, that'll pretty much wrap final practice for the 45th annual Daytona 500, which you will see tomorrow on Fox. Childress Chevrolet. Chris Myers.
Thanks, Mike, Larry, and Daryl. And you see some of the last-minute changes. This was a little bit more adventurous of a happy hour, I think, than a lot of guys thought. One of 5 rookies, Casey Mears in the Daytona 500, having some problems. You think the wind maybe affected his control of the car and hitting the wall?
Chris, it could have contributed quite easily because of the fact the track temperature has gone up almost, probably 12 to 14 degrees over what it was this morning when he ran earlier. The wind has picked up. It's been gusting across turn 4, and several drivers have commented about the fact that when you come off the 4, the car pushes out anyway, so you get a gust of wind. As close as you run to the wall, it'd be real easy to get sucked right up in there, and you saw quite heavy damage. I'm sure you'll be going to a backup car.
And changing the engine, as we saw in Harvick's car moments ago, certainly that will make things even more difficult starting back of the pack.
It makes it more difficult, but I think right now in their case, they're already kind of in the back of the field, so they're not giving up as much as you think, and it's better to be safe than sorry.
And again, Chevy's the cars to beat. Have you seen anything in this last practice session or last day of practice, Jeff, that made
day, and the guys who are going to outrun these the Chevrolet are going to have to team up and work together and keep those guys boxed out if they want to win.
Otherwise, we'll put you in your Ford cutaway car and let you kind of have at it. Practice time over. Next time on the track, they drive for real. Will the Daytona 500 winner be a Chevrolet, a DEI car? Tune in tomorrow on Fox and we'll find out. Racing from Daytona in the Busch Series is next over on Fox. Thanks for watching us here on FX.